Let's dive into the life of Eric Bovan. Eric Bovan is the uncle of Memphis rapper Yo Gotti. Eric Bovan was married to Yo Gotti's and Big Jook's aunt, Janet Mims Bovan. Now Linda Mims is the sister of Janet Mims Bovan, aunts of Yo Gotti. Linda Mims was the first female promoter that Memphis radio station 88.5 had ever worked with. Linda Mims also founded Josa Entertainment, and it was named after her mother, Joan Mims, and grandmother Sadie Mims. Let's rewind a little. Recently, Memphis rapper Yo Gotti's brother, Anthony Big Jook. Mims was killed in a shooting Saturday, January 13th, 2024, shortly after leaving a funeral for his uncle, Eric Bovan, who was alleged to be a big kingpin in Memphis, Tennessee. Speculations are that Big Jook got killed at the repast of Eric Bovan. There are speculations that Big Jook, one of Memphis kingpins, funded the hit for the demise of the late rapper YoungDolph. Here's a little backstory. Memphis rappers YoungDolph and rapper Yo Gotti had an ongoing feud for many years. Allegedly, rumors are that rapper Yo Gotti was upset because rapper YoungDolph would not sign to his record label, CMG. Then allegedly, YoungDolph slept with the mother of Yo Gotti's children. YoungDolph was assassinated at Makita's Cookies in Memphis, Tennessee on November 17, 2021, in Memphis, Tennessee. He was 36 years old at the time of his death. Now let's dive a little deeper into Eric Bovan. Eric Bovan, also known as Big E63, passed on Sunday, December 31st, 2023. His funeral service was held on Saturday, January 13th, 2024, at the Mississippi BLVD Christian Church. Eric Bovan, along with 20-plus co-defendants, was indicted in 1989. Eric was named the ringleader of the Bovan drug ring. Eric was accused of sending his members to Memphis, Tennessee, to Los Angeles, California, to pick up cocaine from a person named Sharon Knox. Now let's go back to the shooting of YoungDolph in Los Angeles, California. In 2017, the late rapper YoungDolph, who was 32 at the time, was also shot several times in Los Angeles, California, next to the Lowe's Hotel in Hollywood, just steps away from the Hollywood Walk of Fame, a bustling tourist district. A law enforcement source told Eyewitness News that people known to associate with Yo Gotti were at the hotel and the shopping center when the shooting happened in Los Angeles, California. Rumors and speculations are that rapper Yo Gotti was behind multiple attempts and the assassination of YoungDolph. Mind you that Eric Bovan, Yo Gotti's uncle, had ties to Los Angeles, California, that date back to the 80s. So do you think it's far-fetched that people believe that rapper Yo Gotti was behind the assassination attempt on YoungDolph's life? Now let's fast forward back to Eric Bovan. As previously stated, Eric Bovan and some members of the Bovan family were indicted in 1989. Bovan also pleaded guilty early in his 1989 federal court trial. Bovan's drug organization had a direct connection to illegal drug suppliers in California, according to testimony during the 1989 trial of his co-defendants, at which Bovan testified. Some of those in the Bovan family organization took the name Bovan as an indication of their status. In Bovan court records, Bovan was a drug kingpin who insisted he had never touched any of the cocaine that he trafficked. Federal agents at one point put a tracking device on his car and then watched nearby as someone walked from Bovan's house and removed it from the car. Linda Faye Mims, aka Pee-wee, Yo Gotti's aunt, was sentenced to prison for 84 months after a jury found her guilty of conspiracy to possess cocaine with intent to distribute. Now, Janet Mims Bovan is the sister of Linda Faye Mims, and she was married to Eric Bovan. Now, Mims's brother-in-law, Eric Bovan, was the apparent leader of a large cocaine distribution network that transported cocaine from Los Angeles to Memphis. After government officials learned that Mims' house on Monett Street in Memphis was being used in the cocaine network, they placed the house under video surveillance. The videotapes show co-conspirators Eric and Janet Bovan entering Mims' house on September 17, 1987, with Earl Woods, a government informant. Woods testified that he accompanied Eric and Janet Bovan to Mims' house and that they carried a briefcase containing money. He said that Mims gave a sack containing $25,000 to $40,000 to them, and that they counted the combined money, which totaled $100,000 to $170,000. Woods also testified that on another occasion, he and another co-conspirator delivered a bag containing 7 kilograms of cocaine to Janet Bovan, and that she told him that she was taking the cocaine to Mims' house. Another co-conspirator by the name of Anthony Bovan testified that he met other members of the conspiracy at Mims's house and that he picked up $75,000 to $100,000 at her house. Additional videotape evidence shows that several people left Mims' house with plastic bags containing a white powdered substance. During a search of Mims' house, agents found a loaded .38 caliber revolver and a shoebox with trace amounts of cocaine. Mims argues that the district court erred in admitting her incriminating statement in which she admitted that Eric Bovan had given her cocaine to sell. She contends that she made the statement in the course of plea discussions. In another court document, L.C. White, Torrell Henderson, and Joyce E. Howell, defendants, L.C. White, Torrell Henderson, and Joyce E. Howell, appealed their convictions and sentences for conspiracy to possess cocaine with the intent to distribute and distribution of cocaine. Court documents say that defendants were indicted along with 23 co-defendants by a federal grand jury on November 29, 1989. These defendants were alleged to have belonged to a drug distribution conspiracy which brought cocaine from Los Angeles, California, to Memphis, Tennessee. This conspiracy was named the Bovan Organization after its apparent leader, Eric Bovan, and his family, which owned the nightclub, Mr. B's, around which the conspiracy centered. The indictments were the result of cooperation of a conspiracy member, Earl Woods, with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Defendant Henderson admits both that the evidence established the existence of the Bovan conspiracy and his own knowledge of that conspiracy. Henderson contends, however, that the evidence is insufficient to show his actual participation in the conspiracy. Henderson maintains that this element of his conspiracy conviction is supported solely by the uncorroborated testimony of a single witness, Robert Earl Winters, and that this testimony is so unreliable it does not support his conviction. After identifying Henderson in the courtroom, Winters described a trip from Memphis to Los Angeles by Winters and Henderson. Winters described Henderson's participation in Memphis in counting and carrying $140,000 in drug money. Winters indicated that Henderson was present when that money was exchanged with Sharon Knox for 8 kilograms of cocaine in Los Angeles, and that Henderson had a role in bringing the 8 kilograms of cocaine back to Memphis. On cross-examination, Winters testified that he had made more than one trip to Los Angeles to carry out cocaine transactions, and that Henderson was in charge of the transaction on at least one of these trips. The crux of Henderson's attack on the evidence is his contention that this testimony by Winters is contradicted by that of Knox. Knox testified that Henderson was present when money was exchanged for drugs in Los Angeles, but that, as far as she knew, he was there for the ride. We do not find this testimony to contradict Winters' description of Henderson's participation. In fact, if nothing else, Knox's testimony corroborates that of Winters. Both testified that Henderson traveled to Los Angeles on trips where money was exchanged for drugs. The only possible contradiction would arise from Winters' testimony that Henderson was in charge and Knox's testimony that she had insufficient information to determine anything about Henderson's involvement except that he was present and knew what was happening. These statements do not necessarily conflict, and there are a number of theories which would reconcile them. It is quite conceivable, for instance, that the person in charge of a drug deal might not handle the money and drugs or do anything during the actual transaction. Thus, based on the testimony of Winters and Knox, we find enough evidence of Henderson's participation in the Bovan conspiracy that a rational trier of fact could have found him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Nothing in the record required the jury to reject Winters' testimony. Now let's talk about Larry Salisbury. Larry Salisbury was indicted as well. He was involved in a lengthy conspiracy led by Eric Bovan that caused in excess of 100 kilograms of cocaine to be transported into Memphis, Tennessee. The evidence showed that the defendant was a knowing participant in a large-scale drug trafficking conspiracy. Anthony Bovan testified that the defendant was involved in drug dealing with Eric Bovan, and that the defendant got 2 or 3 kilograms of cocaine a couple of times. Earl Woods, a cooperating individual, testified that when he was working for Eric in the storing of drugs, I had to answer to Larry and Tony as far as distributing their amount and their quantity to them. Donald Tyler, a cocaine purchaser, testified that he purchased cocaine twice from the defendant. Physical evidence, including Ziploc bags and vitamin powder relating to drug distribution, was found at the defendant's residence. Earl Woods testified that when himself, Uncle Bo, Mark Bowie were supposed to take 2 kilos and drop them off at Larry Salisbury's house, but we messed up and left it at Miss Evelyn's house because Larry had been staying there, but it was Miss Evelyn's house. We put the kilos inside. Well, we put them inside the storage room, mistaking Larry's house, and nobody was there. So we called Larry again, and Larry instructed us that wasn't the house he told us to, and Kenny Upshaw would meet us at a disclosed area and give it to him. Anthony Bovan also testified against his brother Larry Salisbury, and Larry Salisbury was sentenced to 293 months in prison. Now, in the summer of 1992, the U.S. Marshals Marathon 8-hour auction in Crystal City, a gold pendant the size of a breastplate, bordered by 84 rubies, and studded with 229 diamonds that spelled Las Vegas Eric. Now let's dive into October 2009. Eric Bovan was heading toward another sentencing. Bovan, a kingpin by 80s standards, was sentenced after pleading guilty to 2 counts of conspiracy involving the illegal trafficking in prescription drugs. Federal authorities were already watching Dr. Daniel Fearnow, who was the primary target of a long-term Drug Enforcement Administration investigation, when Bovan literally drove into the investigation, picking up a batch of prescriptions from Fearnow, handed out the back door of the doctor's office. Bovan and his attorney, Arthur Horn, told Anderson that Fearnow ran across Bovan when Bovan was hospitalized for one of several strokes Bovan has had in recent years. Horn attributed the health problems to Bovan's every other day use of cocaine for years. DEA agents stopped Bovan as he left Fearnow's office in October 2009 and found 25 prescriptions for Xanax, Lortab, and hydrocodone in 10 different names. Bovan was a middleman, getting the prescriptions from Fearnow for $45 each, filling them, and then selling them at a markup to dealers who in turn may have sold to other dealers. Gillily told Anderson that Bovan began cooperating immediately. A month after he was stopped by DEA agents near Fearnow's office, Bovan had another stroke. Anderson sentenced Bovan to 3 years in prison. Now let me ask you this. Do you think the YoungDolph and Yo Gotti's feud really stems from money, power, and respect? YoungDolph had a following of his own and had made a name for himself. He had his own money and was an independent artist that started his own record label called PRE, which stands for Paper Route Entertainment. Yo Gotti's ties to Eric Bovan, the drug lord / kingpin in Memphis. Do you think Yo Gotti was intimidated by YoungDolph? Also, do you think this is why Yo Gotti wanted YoungDolph to sign to his record label CMG to keep the money and power in the Bovan and CMG family? Or do you think he tried to silence rapper YoungDolph by trying to get him to sign to his label, CMG or an NDA? Do you believe this could be the reason why Big Jook was taken out? Majority of the 80s Memphis kingpins are now deceased, along with Big Jook, which leaves rapper Yo Gotti to carry the torch. Do you think rapper Yo Gotti will get indicted next, since his big brother Big Jook got unalived? I'm pretty sure the detectives will find some interested information while trying to find out who unalived Big Jook. Maybe more people will come forward. What are your thoughts? Leave us a comment. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more content like this.